this is Mish, and welcome to another WestWorld video. This one is a theories video on the possible locations of WestWorld. Now before I get started, just to clarify, the image on the thumbnail is from the 1972 movie called Silent Runnings. I recently watched it, and the domes on the spaceships fit well with one of the theories I will mention in a minute. I'm going to present a few pros and cons to 6 possible theories. They're ranging from the mundane theory to the tin foil hat wearing, doomsday prepper, off the board type theories. So if tinfoil hats scare you and the premise of challenging the mainstream theories make you uncomfortable, perhaps skip this video. So we'll start with the common theories, then push the Richter scale up, and why not? These theories are a lot of fun. So let's start with theory number 1. Theory number 1. So WestWorld is just in Central America. So the pros for this: we have a familiar landscape, of course. We have familiar fauna and flora. The satellites make a lot of sense, so we have satellite communications, so that's an easy one. A large body of land as well. Once again, that fits Central America quite nicely, as that is a massive location. So a couple of cons with that. So how would you stop people entering WestWorld? If it was just a massive park in the middle of Central America, you're going to need security roaming the borders. You're going to need possible border walls. Who knows what technology they have available to them, but something which keeps people out. And also something which keeps people in as well. You wouldn't want to enter the park just to find yourself going past the border unknowingly. So there has to be something there, a physical wall or something. Another thing to point out, a con here, is there is no air travel that we see. There's no air traffic. So that could be, I guess you could say that they have diverted planes around that location, but it's a massive area that WestWorld is in. So you'd think you'd see some planes around. And on top of that as well, people would be crazy for this location. They'll be trying to get in all the time. And, who's to say that someone wouldn't try to fly a smaller plane into the park? But with the body of land, whilst I say it is a pro because of Central America, it's also a con as well, because the cost of a massive body of land of that scale is insanely excessive. But in saying that, it is not impossible, but it's going to be a significant amount. Okay, so that wraps up a quick theories number 1. So let's move on to theory number 2. I'll try and keep all these nice and abridged. We're just trying to cover the main points. So theory number 2, on an island. So the pros with this one: we have an isolated location. So that's fantastic to keeping people out and keeping people in as well. So if you're surrounded by a body of water, less likely to swim away. Okay, another thing here is a pro. Maeve's escape code mentioned infiltrate the mainland. Now I interpret that to mean that they're not on the mainland, and the mainland is probably Central America. We also see a large body of water on the map. When we are in, I guess, the headquarters or the main facility, and we're looking at the map there's always a large body of water. We also see in the episode 10, when Dolores dies on the beach, that it is a beach, which would also suggest, obviously, a large body of water. And we have serious waves as well within that shot. So it's not just a little lake. But in saying that, they could be simulated. This could be a machine in a little lake pumping out the waves to make it seem as if it's a big ocean. A couple of little pros here as well. Satellites make sense if it's just on an island close to North America or Central America. Satellites would work fine. And the same kind of familiar landscapes we're familiar with, and the fauna and the flora. So that also kind of makes sense that it's going to be in that location, but possibly on an island. Okay, so cons with the theory on an island. Finding an island of that size and owning it. Once again, not impossible, but a significant cost. People arriving by boat. People stealing technology on boats. That's also another thing to think of. Whilst it's easier to control it. A coastal water protection service is a lot easier than having a land protection service. You just need possibly a couple of boats patrolling here and there, but obviously another con that they have to deal with. And once again, that air travel, it's a significant area, a significant island if it is on an island, and are we suggesting that they have diverted the planes? A possibility. Okay, now moving on to theory number 3. Okay, so this is where we start turning up that dial on the crazy train. So theory number 3, underground or possibly underwater. So what are the pros for that? Well, it would be isolated. You can't have a situation where you're underground or underwater and you're pretty isolated from the rest of the world. So that's a positive. The train system that we see is underground. Definitely something to think of. And the facility as well. So the facility is far underground, many levels. We've seen at least up to 80, and it is a deep complex. So there's just something to think about. The comms room as well. There's something which I've sometimes grappled with, because we see when Bernard is talking to his wife that actually was a fabrication by Ford. But does that room exist? It kind of makes sense that it would, because you wouldn't fabricate that room in case Bernard actually needs to contact someone external for whatever reason. Maybe there's a contractor he needs to talk to or something, and he needs to go to the comms room, and the comms room doesn't look like that. It would be a bit of a giveaway. So for me, that comms room probably does exist in that kind of format. So a comms room like that would make sense to have a constant external line, because you can't have that external. The receivers, the transmitters aren't working because of some reason. So having a solid comms room with one line in and out makes sense. And one specific around, I guess, if you say underwater. Now, I think this theory's come from many scenes that we've had where people are kind of snooping around or investigating the lower levels of the facility. And there's so much water pouring out of every location. And definitely I agree that it is a suggestion there that it could be underwater. But we have heard from people, I guess this goes into the cons now, that from staff members there that the cooling system in those areas was actually faulty. So that could be, I guess, sign that away as all that water is just a faulty cooling system. Okay, so let's move on to a couple other cons here. So would satellites work if it was underground and heavy, I guess, deep underwater? Probably not, but in saying that, has satellite technology changed in the future? Obviously, it's a possibility. The amount of effort that this would take to make a landmass like that underwater or underground is even more immense than the other ones. On top of that, we have the sun, we have the moon, we have the wind, we have the weather in these environments. So how are they going to simulate these environments underground and underwater? So let's move on to theory number 4. So this one, I like this one a lot. In space, on a space station. I think it's very cool. So what are the pros? Once again, isolated, remote location, stops people infiltrating and stealing technology, stops people leaving, stealing technology. You could have solid boundaries within this. Satellite for communication, satellites would work. The comms room, it kind of makes sense as well. If you have a comms room on a spaceship, it makes sense. But there's quite a few cons with this one, obviously. So how would the visitors get to the park? So we have to say that space travel is very accessible. It's so much effort. Once again, these theories, the amount of effort would be insane. We have to have simulated environments, so the sun, the moon, the wind, the weather. Just a costly endeavor, and would it happen? So number 4 was on a space station in space. Okay, so let's move on to number 5. On another planet. So what are the pros for this one? We can tick off isolation, remote location, which makes sense for the security, keeping people in, keeping people out. Explains the amount of land and resources they would have. If the human race got access to another planet, you would assume that the land masses on there would be largely available for people that had the money to get to that point. So that kind of makes sense. It explains the communication methods, how satellites would work, because you're on another planet, so who's to say satellites aren't put up on that planet? And also explains the kind of communication room once again. What are the cons? The landscape and nature are so familiar that it would be another monumental effort just to replicate that. But we have seen that Ford has mentioned that they built everything, even down to the blade of grass. So, do we take them literally on that one? That's debatable. Stars as a reference as well. We see that that they're referencing stars, and if you're on another planet, that would obviously be different. So once again, the same as on a space station, how would the guests get to this WestWorld planet, or the park on a planet? I mean, we know that the cost is insane, the amount of the people are planning to get in WestWorld, but still, space travel at that cost is a pretty good deal. But then in the future, we might have future technology around space travel, so that might have gotten a lot cheaper. That is definitely a con. Okay, now let's move on to number 6, my final theory. So this is augmented reality, or a simulation. So pros. I've seen many references to nonsensical science as far as, our technology at our current status in WestWorld. You could argue that it's future technology, but it's things that just kind of don't make sense, and there's many references to them. The train that Logan and William are on when they first arrive in the park. They open the door and enter the back of the train. Then we see there's a lift behind them, and it goes up and down, and then all of a sudden, boom, the movement of the train starts and they're out. It doesn't kind of make sense. It doesn't really gel very well. And also for the bullet behavior, that one really irks me as well. I mean, we could just say that it could just be technology that we don't understand, or it could be possibly, are we meant to give them, the illusion of disbelief with these points? But for a host to be able to shoot an inanimate object, a can or a glass bottle, and it explodes and it works like a normal bullet, then for them to point it at a human, a flesh target, and it doesn't do any damage, it hits them and it knows it's a flesh target, and opposed to if they shoot a host. And remember, the hosts are pretty much human now with the latest versions of them. There's only a slight change in their brain makeup. So how would a bullet know? There's once again many ways you could look at that, but that's just another example there for me. And also the knives, how a host could stab another host and it works. How a host could stab a guest and it doesn't work. It could just be future technology, but for me, it's a bit of strange. A couple other things as well, how we have camera angles recording the hosts. I have heard people mention that the flies are the cameras. Definitely an option, but I believe we also heard that the flies are the only things not under control in WestWorld. So that kind of rules that out. But could you argue that the camera angles are satellites? Maybe. But we've seen camera angles within buildings. You could say, well, that's just future technology, that they can penetrate certain layers of a building. I can't argue that. Who knows what this future technology is in this made-up WestWorld world. And what are the cons with the augmented reality simulation? Well, probably the main one that really sticks out. What is the point of a robot revolution in a simulated environment? And it's a perfectly valid point, and I can't argue that at all. But I mean, for me, that augmented reality I like it. I like that. I think I like that option. So there you go, 6 theories. I have my favorites, and I have the one I think is most likely. So my favorite is probably the augmented reality. I quite like that. It kind of would tick a lot of boxes that I've got gripes with, and I'd like to see something along those lines. But I think most likely it's probably just on an island. And what about your thoughts? Do you agree with any of these theories? Do you have a preference? Or what do you believe is actually going to eventuate next season? Any theories you think I've missed? Any major ones there? There's obviously going to be some less well-known ones around, but I think they're probably the main ones. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've really enjoyed making it. It's a lot of fun doing these type of things. Don't take it too seriously. It's just for fun. Please comment and like the video and subscribe for future content from myself. And until next time, this is Mesh, and I'll see you later.